about guns. So, yes, I said it. So, I apologize to everybody out there if you can hear me. We're trying to work on this. Just a quick heads up. If you would like to speak at any time, which I highly encourage you to do so in a civil manner, speak up, but just know we're going to have to deal with this noise barrier. So make sure that you project. We've got microphones on the two corners of the table here, so if you want to get it at any time, they held them up there perfect. Please feel free to grab it so that we can hear you. We think that your contribution is important. All right, so you've heard me talk a little bit. I'm in a tizzy. Who is this guy? My name is Alex Ritchie. I'm a student coordinator for the McCarthy Center here. This is my 4th year working/volunteering for the McCarthy Center. And this is sort of my spiel. This is what I do. I love politics and a pint. It's what I've been working on. And I'm highly encouraged, and it's just heartwarming to see so many of you here. I recognize a lot of faces. So thank you for coming out today. The McCarthy Center, what are we? Public policy, civic engagement. Sounds like a lot of stuff I don't want to get involved in. Wrong. No matter what your major is, whether it's biology, whether it's pre-law, whether it's economics or environmental studies, we think that you have a place in politics, that your voice needs to be heard, and that in order to be part of the shared identity which makes us Americans, which makes us part of this world, you need to know what's going on around you. So that's what this is, right here today. We're going to be talking about guns, the Second Amendment, other sorts of mumbo-jumbo, what's happening. Unfortunately, we do not have the taps open right now. It's a setback. Yes, I was crying. I composed myself. We're here live. We're going to battle through it to the best of our abilities. Perhaps it's a good thing that guns and beer do not mix. All right. So, today, if you've been to one of these events before, this is going to be a little bit different. All right? We don't have a panel. We have some representatives from College Democrats fittingly on my left and College Republicans fittingly on my right. They will be able to provide introductions to what they want to talk about today. I'm going to start us off, actually, with a little introduction of my own, so just bear with me. If at any time you want to contribute something, please do. That's what this is all about. It's a conversation. It's laid back. Go get more grub. Go get some water. It's going to be fun, and we're going to pack it into the next 54 minutes or so. It's going to be fun. If you want to talk about it afterwards, I'll be around. All right, so at the end, my hope, my goal, is that we will find something which we will agree upon. Yes, here's where you can start laughing a little bit. It's okay, you can chuckle. But I do think that with shared beliefs, with shared common goals, we can say, yes, we want to do X, Y, and Z. And so we're going to try and establish that. So, without further ado, I'm going to sit down, but I'm going to continue with my introduction here. All right, so let's get ready to rumble. It's go time. All right, so history, where that matters. It's how we got here today. So, does anyone have the exact wording of the Second Amendment in front of them? All right, well, okay, one person. I was hoping that nobody would because I carry it around with me wherever I go. All right, so I'm only partially kidding. Usually it's in my backpack. So you're going to hold the microphone for me here while I read it, and then we'll get started here. All right, are you guys ready? It's a super long amendment. It reads, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." That is the entirety of the Second Amendment, and it is historically important because it is at the root of a lot of these gun talks that we're currently experiencing at the national and state level. All right. So, I don't want to talk historically. I don't want to talk about militias. I think it's a fun fact to kick us off on the right foot that if you are 18 years old and male, whether you like it or not, you are actually part of the America Militia. Congratulations. You're pretty cool. All right. So, that was the fun fact. Major props to the people who had it on them for the Second Amendment. So, when you hear these words, Congressman Gifford, Virginia Tech, Aurora, Colorado, and then Newtown, Connecticut. Those things are places, they're people, but they're more than that now. They're events. They're something that's part of our history and something that we have to deal with on a daily basis. They are something which has instituted the talk that we're going to have right here, right now. It's the environment that we find ourselves in, and it's why we want to talk about it right now. However, I hope this is slightly comedic relief for you. January 19th, Pennsylvania. A 5-year-old girl pointed this at a classmate. If you can't see it, it looks pink. You're right, it is pink. It's a Hello Kitty bubble shooter. It shoots bubbles. You know, the things that you played with when you're 5. She was suspended for 10 days for terroristic threats. 10 days. Okay? Newtown is not funny. This a little bit funnier. But we are in a serious environment where we're scared. How do we talk about guns? What do we do moving forward? And this is a serious conversation we need to have. I'm going to pass this around so you can understand the full comedy of this. Luckily for her, we handled this like grown-ups. We hired lawyers, and we got it down to a 2-day suspension so everybody can breathe. And no longer was she interrogated by the principal. I think that's great. So, that's funny, great, right? But what are we doing politically? All right, so we've all heard President Obama has 23 executive orders relating to guns. I unfortunately do not have the list in front of me. It's sitting up here on my computer. If you're interested, we can talk about them. I'm eager to hear what both sides have to say, and the general student body. We also have today, Thursday, besides this big papal election, the conclave, we've got a gun showdown. The Senate Judiciary Committee was set to consider 4 gun safety measures today, all right? The first one includes an assault weapons ban. We had one in 1994. I think it lasted 10 years. That's something we can talk about here today. The other 3, one aimed to stop illegal gun trafficking. One was to enhance the safety of schools, of which we're attending one. And one was to enact universal background checks. That's happening at the federal level today in the Judiciary Committee. At the state level, because we have a federalist system, at the Minnesota level, we've got 6 things which are being considered. They were being considered early February. We are now late February. And it's something at the state level that we're going to have to keep tabs on. And I also have that sitting in front of me. So, fact checkers beware. I can scope you guys out. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think of all of these things happening at both the federal and state level. Finally, polls. We're part of a larger community. We're part of the United States of America. There's a lot of people out there. In a poll of which I don't have the official, it starts with a Q, they found that 9 out of 10 Americans support universal background checks for guns, which means that if you're privately selling or public, there needs to be a background check. In a CBS News poll, yes, I do have that source, if you don't believe my first one, they found that 92% of Americans favor universal background checks. So something that we can talk about, some more food for thought, all right? So my opening question, we're going to have College Democrats representative speak first. College Republicans will have their say. But if at any time you want to contribute, please do not feel scared to do so. This looks intimidating. It's not. It's really easy to speak in front of a group of people with a microphone. You guys can do it. I have faith. So, given the current state of our culture, the situation that we find ourselves in today, what do you think should happen regarding guns, gun legislation, and both at the state and federal level? Oh, that's your mic. I apologize. I'm sorry. Here you guys go. That's
Thanks, Alex, first of all, for giving us the opportunity to discuss this topic. Thanks, Jake. And thanks, Tyler, again, for coming and discussing this. So I think the first thing that we want to look at is what has the president proposed about this, and the Senate Democrats. And the first thing that I think everyone agrees is that we should close the gun show loophole, which means basically, if you're a gun dealer, right now, if you're a gun dealer, you have to do a background check on the person you sell the gun to. But if you're a private dealer, you don't even have to check their identification. If it's at a gun show, you can give them a gun, and they give you cash, and each of you go your separate ways. Had we had background checks for private gun sales before 1999, the shooters in Columbine, Virginia Tech, and the Gabby Gifford shooting would not have been able to get their guns the way that they did. Another thing that I'd like to add on to that is that we should require people, and this is something the president has proposed, that we should require people to report their guns when they're lost, stolen, or sold, so that we can cut down on what's called straw purchasing, which basically means I have a friend who wants to get a gun, but he has a felony on his record, or for some reason he has a mental health disability, can't get a gun. I buy the gun, I give it to him, and then he can do whatever he wants with it. So basically what we should do there is keep the people who engage in straw purchasing, we should keep them liable for what happens to these guns when they give them away. Right now they aren't held liable. Now the second thing that the president has proposed is that we update the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, also known as the NICS. Basically what this would do is require all federal and state agencies to report to the FBI, and it would also require mental health agencies as well as colleges and universities to report to the FBI the names of people who they know to be either violent criminals, drug abusers, or have mental disorders. Had this law been enacted before 2007, the Virginia Tech incident, Tucson, and Aurora shooters would have been known in the database, and they would have not been able to get their guns the way that they did. A third thing, and something I personally hold dear, is that we should increase funding to schools to provide mental health services such as psychologists, counselors, and SROs, or school resource offices, to the students, as well as teach principals and teachers the basic, give them the basic training that they need to be able to recognize and react to mental health disabilities, and report those to the district so that those people can get the help that they need. And then under that, too, require private health insurance companies to cover mental illnesses as part of their health insurance. Now the fourth thing, and probably the most controversial thing that we're going to talk about, is the assault rifle ban and the limits on high-capacity magazines. The reason, you might wonder, why would we want to get rid of our assault rifles? They're fun, right? I mean, you guys, I get that the guy in the NRA shirt would agree. Assault rifles are fun. Well, the president and the Democratic Party, we recognize that our country has a long-standing and deep-rooted tradition in these types of personal freedoms, such as the right for people to use guns in hunting and for self-defense. However, assault rifles were developed specifically by military experts to be used in military situations to kill mass numbers of people, and ironically, that's exactly what they've been used for. They've been used by mentally deranged people in this country to go into public settings and kill large numbers of people in a matter of minutes. So due to the horror and tragicness of the Columbine shootings, the Virginia Tech, and then in the last couple of years we saw the Gabby Gifford shooting, I think where 6 people were killed, and then the Aurora, Colorado movie theater shooting where 12 innocent people were slaughtered, and then most recently the shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, where 20 innocent children and 6 innocent adults had their lives tragically ended. So due to this, the president and led in the Senate by Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein have proposed to renew the assault rifle ban that Alex mentioned earlier, that would put a ban on the selling and production of military-grade semi-automatic assault rifles that was passed in 1994 and then expired in 2004. And then in that, it would include a new clause that would limit the maximum number of the magazine size to be 10 rounds. The Democratic Party, of course, recognizes that no single part of this plan on its own could limit the problem as a whole, but all separate parts of this plan, when put together, would begin to curb the gun violence in this country and help to hopefully prevent these types of horrific mass shootings that have escalated in the past couple of years.
Excellent. Thank you. There's a lot to talk about there, and I've got a few questions, but before we get going, can everybody hear me? All right, good. I know sometimes I'm a little annoying to listen to. So, without further ado, we've got the College Republicans have agreed to a quick response. And by quick, I mean feel free to make sure you hit all your points. And then we're going to open it up. So these two guys might go back and forth. I might ask some questions. But if you guys have something that you'd like to say that's important to you, please do so. Because the conversations that are happening, they said, well, this is for the children. Well, guess what, guys? They still think we're children. So let's give them our voice as well. So thank you, and now, College Republicans.
All right, thanks, Alex. All right, so basically what we're going to focus on a few different issues in this brief response. Me and Robbie are going to double team this very briefly. First, I want to talk about just the culture of violence that we have in America. I'm sure you have all heard at this point. We believe that the issue is not regarding restriction of guns. The issue ought to be rather the really rethinking the position that we our culture as a whole, and our promotion of violence, our tolerance of violence in general, and then in addition to that, our stigma against mental health, and we need to really focus on mental health in our culture and fixing this terrible negative stigma that we have against it. Talking about just this culture of violence, though, I was volunteering at this elementary school last weekend, actually. I was working with a couple children in this, I forgot what the Catholic school is called. It's VSTO program is what it is. But anyways, I was talking with, I was looking through a magazine with one of the kids after we finished a homework assignment, and we came across a Call of Duty ad. And this kid, who is 8 years old, proceeded to tell me about how he played Call of Duty with his older brother. And how his older brother, and he told him what his older brother was doing on this mission, and I was mortified, frankly, because, I mean, I don't know if you all play Call of Duty, and it's literally, it's so realistic nowadays that I can't imagine being exposed to that from the age of 8 onward, and not being in any way desensitized. So I think that we have a cultural problem in the fact that we are very open and tolerant about just violence in general. And I think this is really the core problem behind, we are, obviously we do have high rates of homicide for a developed country. And I think this is more to be, it's more to be attributed to this fact, this culture, than it is any policy regarding gun control, which, as Robbie's going to talk about here in a sec, is actually, like, there's really no correlation between gun control and curbing this violence. So in addition to that, in addition to mental health, this stigma, we're going to say we do, there's disagreement within the party. I personally, and I know there's some Republicans, including my representative in Iowa, Chuck Grassley, have expressed support for a form of background checks, and I think this is absolutely something we do need to talk about. I agree with the college Dems when they say this, but I do think we need to be careful in how we go about implementing background checks so that we do not. There's been talk of a national registry of who has guns, and as a measure of implementing this. And I think we need to find, and I don't have all the solutions, but I think we need to find a way to not take it to that extreme, because I think that it opens up a pretty dangerous slope to potential, or just kind of unnerving knowledge that the fact that they would have that registry. I think that's rather unnerving. We can talk about that later, but I do think background checks are needed, and I agree with them. The gun show loophole does need to be closed. That definitely is something we can find middle ground on. And I do disagree with the ban of any weapons, any further grade of weapons that we have right now. I think ultimately what makes a decision to kill someone is not the gun. It's the man or woman behind the gun. And I think we need to focus on the person behind the gun before we can focus on the gun itself. And I think that's really the premise of what we're focused on. That's really the theme. But Robbie, why don't you hit on some of the facts?
Yeah, just to bring up a couple facts to debunk a couple myths about guns. There's a big myth, a lot of people think that more guns is going to equal more crime. And a Harvard study done has actually kind of shown a bit of the opposite. In the United Kingdom and Australia, there was a almost nationwide ban on private gun ownership in 1997. And and a buyback program. So nearly all private gun ownership had ceased at that point. And since 1997, they did a study in 2004, and violent crime, which includes homicide, assault, sexual assault, and robbery, has actually gone up 5 times. Also, to show some data between neighboring countries in Europe, that some have bans and some don't, Russia, a country that has had a lot of violent issues, they ban guns, and their rate of crime of murder actually is 20.5 per 100,000 people. But nations such as Finland and Norway which allow private gun ownership, actually is 1 per 100,000 people. So I just wanted to bring up a couple of facts to kind of get some other people's input on it.
All right. So there's a lot to talk about. I've got questions of my own as discussion leader. I'm not going to call myself a moderator because I don't want this to get too intense here. But are there any objections to what was said on either side? And if not, if I'm not seeing any hands or hearing any voices, I'm going to pose a question of my own. So here's your opportunity. Yes.
My question is, how do you compare Finland to Russia? Honestly, for all the policy decisions you may be able to compare, but their countries are completely different from all of us.
I think that's actually the point I was trying to make with that, is that the ban on guns isn't going to be the solution. It's a cultural change, because just like you said, the culture in Russia is what's causing the violence, right? Believe that's the point you brought up? Right. So could we kind of see that similar as United Kingdom, which has a very violent culture?
That's not true. Sorry. You can keep going. Okay.
Yeah, explain that.
Yeah, no. Okay, so historically, if you studied the UK and their history, they're one of the most conquering and warring nations you could ever come across in history. So a statistic from 2010 says there were 0.07 recorded intentional homicides committed with a firearm per 100,000 inhabitants, compared to 3.0 per 10,000 in the United States. So, Wikipedia. However, I'm gonna keep going with this. I don't know if any of you watched a Piers Morgan interview with, do you remember that? Does anyone watch that? Alex Jones, thank you. But this statistic was brought up again. So I just want to show that not all violent countries correlate with their violent acts of firearms.
Go ahead, Edwin.
I just want to bring up the point that
Oh,
You might have to turn that off. And then give it 2 seconds to warm up. The microphone's going to be a little
All right. I just want to bring up the point that I don't know if you guys read the little poster that they made, but I'm pretty sure we're not arguing to get rid of guns. I'm pretty sure we're not arguing to completely get rid of the Second Amendment. We're not arguing to completely get rid of all guns. So the information you provided about Russia and Finland, I don't think has anything to do, since we're not getting rid of the gun. We're just saying what type of guns should be available. I mean, and as a normal human citizen, do you really need a rifle that shoots multiple shots? What are you guys, I mean, there's just no legitimate point to need that, except if you live I don't know, I mean, it's just, who needs a rifle to defend themselves?
Just a couple quick clarification points, because we're saying a lot of things like assault weapons, semi-automatic rifles. An assault weapon, as it's characterized, yes, it was for military use. That was its original intent. But for one trigger, it doesn't shoot multiple bullets. It's one bullet per trigger shot. Okay, just so we get that clarified, so everybody's on the same definition of what an assault weapons ban would entail. So that would be guns like the AR-15, which is the most popular for people to talk about as one which would be banned. So yes, you were going to say something, sir.
Oh, yeah. In response to Edwin, I was the people that are gonna eventually end up causing all the violent crimes, they are gonna get their hands on the the assault rifles with the big clips, no matter what, whether they're legal or not. So it's only gonna hurt our culture if the good guys can't get their hands on them too.
See, that has its own merit in the sense, but we still have police forces. We still have a military. We don't necessarily have to have every single member of society being able to defend themselves from one potential threat by having everyone armed. I mean, there is merit to think that maybe, just maybe, that if you have a lot of people with a lot of hyperlethal weaponry, that you may experience a little bit more violence. Like that, it may not even need to be proven. It may just need to look at what happens.
Yeah.
We've got someone over here, but I'm going to let you respond.
Okay.
I like that you, or is it my turn, Alex? All right. I like that you bring up the police force, but the thing is, half the time they're kind of too little too late, I guess, if they were in Connecticut, if they were at Virginia Tech, when they needed to be there. Not all those people would have died. I think that if we did have a wider, like if it was possible for us to expand our police force where they were everywhere at once, I think that would be great, but I just don't think that's going to happen, so...
Interesting. I'll make sure to come back to this.
Sure, absolutely. In terms of the College Republicans' phrase of culture of violence, I'd like to talk a little bit about the different cultures, especially I'm coming off of a semester abroad in Europe, and I'd like to talk a little bit about Switzerland. Now, Switzerland has a prescribed military service when you turn 18. That means every man, no matter what, has to go into the military. And every single man that goes into the military has to, by law, keep their assault rifle. Now, also, their culture obviously is very different. It's very normal for people to see, for people to be seen on the streets walking with their rifles or sidearms. And I'd also like to talk about that the crime rate in Switzerland is 0.5 gun homicides per 100,000 inhabitants, whereas the United States, it's 5 firearm killings per 100,000 people. And so I'd kind of like to bring that up in the sense, do you think that prescribed or necessary military service would change the culture of violence in the United States?
We've got a couple responses, but like I said, feel free to jump in at any time. We don't have to follow parliamentary procedure. So while I'm going to try and keep track of all the hands raised, if you have an immediate point to make, go ahead. So, Tyler, you had a response.
Yeah. No, I'm not suggesting we do that, but I think that kind of plays into a little bit what was said over there, that there isn't necessarily a correlation by any stretch of the imagination between limiting guns, even very dangerous guns, with actually decreasing violence. The fact that in Switzerland everyone has a gun, that actually, as you said, Debbie, that deters violence, and I think that is very worth noting and kind of plays into what we're saying here. No, I'm not suggesting that we do have mandatory military service by any stretch of the imagination, but I do still retain that I think we do have, this is more of a cultural thing, a cultural issue than it is a societal issue than it is an issue that the government specifically needs to intervene on. But.
All right, so a couple quick things. We're talking about culturally in the United States. Are we different from other countries? Are we similar to other countries? I know Lucas had a few points to make. Then we had someone in the far back. I'll make sure to get a microphone to you. You don't need one? All right. Lucas is going to go, and then the big boy's up.
All right.
Hello? Hello? Okay. Hi, my name is Lucas Webben. I'm a senior here at St. John's University. I see a lot of familiar faces in this room, and they all know they never want to hear me talk, so I'll try to keep this brief. Also, I find it really interesting that the people really aggressive to sit at the table were, for the most part, men, and all the women are sitting at sort of further back in the audience, maybe just kind of, for those of you who like to analyze gender issues in our society, start thinking about that. Anyway, here's where I've fallen off the wagon sort of on both sides of the argument, because I think we're having a really silly discussion, because on the one hand, I own 5 guns myself. I'm a hunter. I go out all the time in the fall. I'm not one of those guys who I won't tell you where I keep my guns. I keep them locked up in a gun cabinet in my house. I keep my ammunition stored in another room completely at the opposite end of the house. I take my guns out for when I want to go hunting. That's what I use them for. So I consider myself a pretty responsible gun owner in that sense. But here's the thing. I think the pro-gun side has a bit of a fault admitting that guns are used for killing things. They can be used for killing squirrels, grouse, deer, pheasant, ducks, but they can also have their purposes turned over and used for killing people. I think you're naive to say, oh, these guns are only for shooting clay pigeons and they don't cause... it can be used for other purposes. But on the other side, I have a problem listening to people tell me about how we should have an assault weapons ban because the mechanics behind what an assault rifle in America, as defined by, as we went over earlier, the mechanics behind what actually makes up an assault rifle aren't really that different from what makes up other types of rifles and things you have on the market. I have a 30-06 deer rifle I use. Holds 7 rounds. I can have that thing emptied and reloaded and firing more because I'm a terrible shot, but I'm really fast at reloading that rifle. You know, so I fall off the wagon when people start talking about sort of, oh, we need to ban clip sizes. Well, the reason why the shooter at Aurora, Colorado stopped using his assault rifle was because high-capacity mags are garbage to begin with, and they jam too easily. Why is it the U.S. military only uses mags that have a maximum capacity of 20 to 30 rounds to begin with? Also, if you're looking at limiting clip sizes, it only takes seconds to reload any type of firearm out there. Anybody in this room who's never fired a gun before in their life, raise your hand. I bet you given probably 4 or 5 hours, I could have you trained to fire, unload, and reload any rifle, anything on the market in a matter of hours. So I think we get ourselves into these really deep sort of red herring debates. Everyone gets so just impassioned and embroiled. I think what we have to ask ourselves is what really is the issue here? You know, where does this violence stem from? If you look at the FBI's crime-reported statistics, the number of violent murders with any type of gun in general have gone down. They've gone down since the 90s. And I'm not saying, oh, it's because there are more guns. So I'm not drawing any correlations. I'm saying there has been a decrease in violence. And I'm not asking where is the fire, because clearly there is a problem when a man storms his way into an elementary school and shoots up a bunch of people. I'm not saying that that's not a problem. But what I'm saying is we're trying to come up with these very sort of materialistic responses to maybe a deeper societal question. You know, we're more disconnected from each other than we've ever been. In my 8 a.m.s every morning, I sit down. Everyone's sitting there on their cell phones, texting, tweeting, checking their email. No one's talking to each other. We're more separate from each other, yet we're more connected.
I wasn't paying attention. I was on my phone. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I got you. So, you know, I think we get too impassioned and too embroiled over things we really don't understand or don't control. That's the point I wanted to make, and I'm sorry for taking up all your time.
No,
Goodbye.
that's perfectly okay. I think there's a lot to unpack there. So responses are welcome. A couple quick points, and then I know we had a gentleman in the back who'd like to speak. When we're talking about gun culture, which is something that red herrings and there's problems on both sides, this isn't just crazy people with guns, normal people with guns, good guys, bad guys with guns. In the United States, there are 250 to 280 million firearms. Million, with an M. That's 40 to 50% of U.S. homes that own a firearm. Okay, you look around this room, about half of our households, whether it be parents or maybe grandparents, have some type of gun. That's something that's deep-rooted. It's not necessarily like any other country. That's something that we can talk about as well. But Lucas said a lot of great things. Mr. Andrew Thom, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, I just want to go back a little bit. Who's the gentleman sitting to your left? Sorry, I don't know.
Hi, I'm Kirby.
Hi, I'm Andrew. And you brought up a point earlier about, you know, we have the police force to defend ourselves, correct?
Yes.
And, you know, we shouldn't have to keep firearms in order to defend ourselves from the ones in front. I believe that might be paraphrasing.
Essentially, I mean, my point is that I don't want to see the Old West.
I understand. But, so, I mean, under that logic, why do we have fire extinguishers there? When the fire department would show up to take out the fire. That's one threat that we're defending ourselves from.
Can I ask you a quick question? Do you know exactly how many deaths there are in the U.S. per year by fire extinguisher?
Do you know that? I believe it was 2000.
Not the exact.
400,000 Americans said they believe they would have been dead because of home invasion, but they weren't because they had fire.
There's a difference between belief and what actually
They
happens.
were.
I mean, I've never owned.
Someone invaded their home with a firearm, and they would have been killed if it wasn't for them coming back with a firearm and
which brings up, I think, a great point. I think that, I mean, that's a great statistic, and I think that that is a reason why we should have firearms in our country and why we always have, is so Luke can go hunting when he wants to. I think that's great. So people can keep a pistol or a concealed weapon with them in case they are attacked, because, as Andy said, the police are not always going to be there holding your hand. But I think probably a majority, or almost all of those, I would believe in all of those cases, that those people didn't need an assault rifle with a high-capacity magazine in order to defend themselves. They likely only needed one shot. Or if they're not a good shot, they probably, they didn't need 30 shots. They only had one target that they were trying to hit, whereas assault rifles can be used to kill up to 20 children and 6 adults in a school.
I think this is really interesting. If I could interject for one moment, and then we've got some other people which I think want to jump in on this. But we're talking about defensive gun use. People have died by guns. People have died by fire extinguishers. Google search is failing me right now. I can't find how many people died by fire extinguishers. So I'll keep you updated. But here's a couple of stats that you guys can chew on to talk about defensive gun use, okay? There's 2 estimates, and they're wide-ranging, okay? So you've got one source, which says that there's as many as 2.5 million times per year when guns have been used defensively to protect oneself. That's the high estimate. The low estimate is 100,000. Those 2 sources, one is from 2001, so it's outdated, and the other one's from 1997. So I'm working off outdated information. But regardless, yes, it might be a little bit worse than Wikipedia even. So don't quote me on those things. But regardless, that's a big number of people. So defensive gun use is something that we should talk about when we're talking about culture, when we're talking about America, all the way back to the Second Amendment. So I know you guys had a lot to talk about in there. I want to open it up. I know you've talked a lot. I'm going to try and get to a bunch of different people here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start in the back and popcorn forward, and then we'll try and figure it out. So, gentlemen in the back. Can everybody hear what he's saying? So, that's an excellent point, one that I wish I had researched. All right, so I know we had another gentleman in the back, and then we're going to work our way right here. All right, so go ahead, sir.
I just want to hit on 2 quick points. The first point, talking about self-defense, and I feel that as Lucas brought up, that just kind of me taking my own point is that if you can defend yourself without an assault rifle, as he said, you can train anyone to know how to use a gun and throw it fast. So if you really are worried about defending yourself, there's no reason you can't buy a semi-automatic pistol and get training to learn how to defend yourself with that. There's no need to have a 30-round AR-15. And the second point is that a lot of people go against assault rifle bans by saying it's more of a culture issue. Well, my point is, there's no reason we can't attack that on both sides, that we can try to fix the culture issue and try to take away assault rifles. There's no reason that those two
Assault weapons
All right, I
go
think that's
for
an
1
excellent
to
point.
6%.
One of my favorite sites, if you guys want to know
used in
more
combat.
about assault rifles, assault weapons, did the ban in 1994 work, which we can talk about. There's 2 sides to this. I highly encourage you to go to factcheck.org, okay? It's got a great breakdown of did the 1994 assault weapons ban work or not, with excerpts. Very careful what you say there, because there's excerpts of a report which said yes, it did work. There are excerpts used by the NRA and other members which said, no, it didn't work at all. So, be careful what you say here, because I've got it pulled up in front of me. So, I know we were going to say something here. That's an excellent point.
Virginia.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Kurt Baldwin, first year, poli-sci major, and
and I love guns. My father owns 2 AR-15s. I own a gun. They're awesome. That being said, I don't think we need. I understand where people are coming from about wanting to protect yourself, and how they're worried about about gun control bans, and how that could inhibit guns from being given, how that could inhibit the good guys from having guns. But people have to realize that you can still that these laws wouldn't be taking away conceal and carry permits. You would still have a handgun, and you don't need an assault rifle if you're being attacked by someone, because they're most likely going to be within 10, 20 feet. And if you've fired a pistol before, I'm pretty sure you can hit a human-sized target in 10 to 20 feet.
All right. Interesting that we bring this up, because we're talking about guns, right? So if you're trying to catch up to speed, we're talking about guns, okay? You realize when I said that, I should probably back it. Number two, all right, so we're talking about guns, but preventative measures, right? So that's what we're seeing. We've had big violent crimes happen in the past. We brought them all up, right? But there was something about what happened in Connecticut which shook us to the core. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, liberal, conservative, doesn't matter. There's something about seeing those innocent faces of both young children and adults, teachers, everyone alike, which shook us. So what we're trying to all establish is, how do we prevent this? College Democrats brought up a good point when they said that, if we had some of these measures, we might not have seen those deaths. Those people might not have gotten their hands on guns. We've seen on the other side, and actually Kurt said in the last point exactly, if you have any sort of gun, you'll be able to prevent it. So is the answer more guns, right? So that's something that we can talk about. But my question to you, if we're going to try and find something that we can agree on, as young people here on campus, on a school, where I'm not saying this is going to happen here, because thankfully, we're in a pretty awesome community. But what would you guys, as students, want to see happen that you think would prevent this from happening here? So that's my question. Chew on it, spit on it, spit it back out at me. We're going to start here, come back to College Democrats. Is that okay? All right, so, gentlemen over here.
I'm not even necessarily weighing in an opinion here. I'm just going to throw out a statistic that I want people to think about when they're talking about assault weapons. Based on what you talked about with the 1994 federal ban, do you know the amount of times that assault weapons were used in crimes where the criminal used a gun? There's 1 to 6%. 6% on the high side. So, yes, we'll talk about assault weapons and everything, but that means up to almost 99% of crimes involving a gun, we didn't even use an assault weapon. So is that really what we need to be discussing right now?
Most of you know me. I'm Edward Peichel, former chair of the College Republicans. Anyways, I got a couple points here. First off, in Newtown, there was not an assault, quote-unquote assault rifle used in the school. It was 2 handguns. He did have a AR-15 style rifle, but it was not used. So just so we're clear on that. And yes, I agree we have a problem in this nation, but we need to focus. I agree with the universal health checks with an exemption for, passing a grand family, passing a gun down, things like that. But, we can eliminate some of those sales. But I also agree, I think the biggest thing is we've lost our respect for guns. I've grown up, my parents have always had guns around. When I was 12, I did gun training, and I received a shotgun for my birthday. And I've always respected the power that gun has had, because I didn't grow up playing violent video games where it's, you're just blasting people around. I know what it feels like to shoot a gun. I know what it's like to see, something die at the hands of a gun, and I don't want to see a person die at the hands of a gun. It's as simple as that. I think, I don't know if we should mandate gun control, mandate gun safety training in schools. I think it would be great if more schools did it. But I think kids need to learn to respect guns. And I think that's a big thing that we can deal with students. And I think that the biggest difference between an assault rifle and a normal semi-automatic rifle, as we've talked about, is the availability of large scale magazines, most of which jam and are junk to begin with, and these scary looks of the sights and the attachment rails, which hundreds of people use for sport shooting, people use them for hunting. It doesn't matter what they're used for. In almost all the cases, the assault rifles, quote unquote, that are available on the market are used for sport or used for hunting. They're not used for crimes. And since we've come to the conclusion that there's no difference between, there's no difference between a semi-automatic rifle and a regular, and an assault rifle, why do we want to ban them if there's not a difference?
Thanks, Ed. College Democrats, I know Olivia.
Yeah. I just feel like the ladies are really underrepresented here, both physically and speaking. Mainly because I think gun violence isn't really, I don't know how to phrase this, but it's not something we have to worry about. If you look statistically at how many females do we want to look at who have murdered people purposely, not self-defense. And as a lady living alone, well, not yet, but after we graduate, we don't live in Lottie anymore. It'd be nice to have some protection. Granted, I think the best way is some pepper spray, a little bit of mace, something like that when you're in a pinch. I also think one of the things that needs to be talked about a little more is the mental health. If you look at anyone who has committed these mass murders, none of them were mentally sound. And I understand that is part of President Obama's, what are we calling this? His proposal. So I would like to open it up to talking about what we could do about that, because I understand that's a driving force. I get where the college Republicans are coming from, saying that it's not always the gun, because guns can do a lot more than shoot people. And that's not their only purpose. But mental health issues plus guns equals instability. So that's what I'd like to hear from a lot of people, especially some bennies. That'd be great. So, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, first of all, an eye for an eye is gonna turn the whole world blind. So I don't think more guns is the solution here. Although I do think that having the guards right there would have helped way more. Certainly, I went to DC recently, and we had a lot of checks, metal checks. We had to go a lot of security passings and stuff like that. So maybe stuff like that would help, but I'd like to go back on his point and a lot of stuff earlier about the culture and stuff like that. Because to be honest, the idea of America is to have the idea of freedom and to bring all of this diversity, to bring what you want to do and what you can bring to the community and stuff like that, and that's all nice. But we have to look at, like you said earlier about the Call of Duty and stuff like that. I mean, I grew up playing video games, playing GTA at the age of 10, 12, so it doesn't matter. I'm from a different country. But the point is that I don't think that it's actually the media's fault, because, I mean, playing video games, you said that it's just guys that plays video games, basically. But, I mean, some of the books that I've read in classes in high school and stuff like that are much more violent and more gruesome than killing zombies, basically. So I don't think that it's actually the gun's fault. It's not the gun's issue. It's not having the guns. It's just how you, I don't know, I mean, this is biased because I'm coming from a different culture, but I think it's how you grow as a culture, because when you disconnect to connect with the internet, you just release your connection with other people and stuff like that. So you're actually not, like what you said earlier, before we respect guns, I think that you should respect people first. And if you don't respect the people that you're around with, well, I don't know, like I was having a debate tournament, and my partner brought up the fact that somewhere in one of the states, recently, like a 5-year-old kid was trying to bring a gun because this girl was pissing him off. So if the human respect has to come first before you actually can treat something. And to be honest with I'm not trying to take up everyone's time here, but the mental illness stuff, if I'm psycho and I really don't like someone, I can go out and kill someone without a gun. So I don't think it's the gun issue. I think it's just, I don't know, I don't want to use the word culture too much, but I feel like that is sort of.
A couple quick things. Thank you so much for participating. We got some more participation. We are closing down on that 5:30 stop time. So we can either continue with this. I'm going to let a couple more people talk. If you want to hear a couple of my observations, I would like to wrap up and sort of check mark some things I think we can try and agree on. because that's the end goal of this exercise, of this conversation. So if you want to hear that, plus maybe a spiel or two on what I think should happen, because I want that to happen. So I'm going to let the gentleman to my right speak. I know there's a few outside comments that we're going to try and get in, and then I will keep my comments brief. Please feel free to come in. Come on. You know you want to. I scared him away. All right. Actually, before I get to you, we're going to go here
Go for it.
and then here.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Yes. Technical difficulties. All right.
There we go.
All right.
There you go.
So I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit new to this, and I don't know a lot about this issue, but I feel like we keep coming back to, as far as the underlying issue, like killing in schools, and that's what kind of causes everything. That's what brings up the gun debate issues. And I was just thinking about if, I don't know, I guess I was thinking about assault rifles, and if we were allowed to keep our assault rifles, if assault rifle laws were not, or banning laws were not put in place, I just don't know how that would affect schools, because you say, like, if we can keep assault rifles, then we can protect ourselves from criminals with assault rifles, but I just don't know how that's going to work in schools, because no matter what, those guns to protect ourselves are never going to be in schools. So the only people that will ever have guns in schools are the criminals. So I guess I can kind of agree with the fact that we want to restrict people who can get guns, and we want to put laws against those kind of guns, because no matter what we do to protect ourselves, we're never going to be able to protect schools with guns, I don't think.
I think that's a really excellent point. I had never thought about it like that. I have an answer for you, but I'm remaining impartial. So, gentleman to my right, I know you had some things to talk about.
Sounds good. All right, my name is Ben. I'm a sophomore political science major. And first off, I'd just like to say that I thought both sides did an excellent job bringing forward a lot of good points, both sides. So just like give props to everybody. I really like the point of what Alex brought up about trying to come together on a couple of these issues. Obviously, we're never going to completely agree, but one thing I'd like to hear from college Republicans about is what kind of what Olivia was talking about with the mental health thing. And would you guys be willing to delegate more funding, more resources to bring more help, more assistance to first identifying mental health and then trying to find some sort of solution, because clearly we're lacking right now. So in schools and otherwise, I'd just like to hear a couple comments.
Yes, we'd be open to that, and I think that this is, I keep saying that I think this is the fundamental issue here. I think as has been said a few times down back there, the real problems here are, I think, a cultural problem and a mental health problem, and they're kind of intertwined, honestly. There's a stigma against mental health in this country. There's a lack of awareness about mental health in this country, and we need to fix that. And we absolutely would be open to exploring new options, to opening up doors regarding, like exploring mental health and advancing our knowledge on that matter. And I think that is essential. That's very much an area we agree on. I think background checks is another area we agree on. How it's implemented, like we said, we need to be careful about, I think. But I think we do agree with the premise of background checks, and I think that is, those are a couple of things that we should really build on. And maybe, just maybe, fingers crossed, our lawmakers will listen to the vast majority of its constituents and recognize, everyone kind of can come together on a couple of these issues, and that'd be nice. But I can't have too high of hopes. So.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Hello.
There you go.
Just jumping on a few things here. I'm actually doing a report on this for my Cornerstone policy class. I'm a a political science major, and I do support the idea of background checks, because I've been back and forth on this issue. I guess why would we need assault weapons, but again, I do support the Second Amendment. One thing I would say is if we ban assault weapons, I see that one as prohibition, alcohol prohibition. We banned alcohol, and people still had speakeasies and still had alcohol. So if we ban assault weapons, it's going to be a black market. Two, if we ban assault weapons, are we going to ban other weapons? Because ARs, yes, they kill people, but so can a handgun, so can a shotgun. And also commenting on the idea of schools. I think that schools are very, frankly, I do not like what happened to Newtown. It was mortifying. It was terrible. It was shocking. We can all agree on that. Red and blue, we can all agree on that. It was terrible. But also I feel like there's almost a stigma with schools since they claim that they don't have a ban on weapons. There's almost a stigma there. So, I mean, I really don't know how we could address that, but if we want to prevent a school shooting, which I hope we can, I mean, maybe we should address that too.
I think you brought up a few great points. We're almost out of time, so here's what I'm going to do. Because I know there's quite a few bennies here. There's a bus in 15 minutes. I want to make sure that they can get it. If you guys are willing, I would like to say a few things to wrap up and then maybe put my own personal spin on it, if you're interested. All right, so remaining with my many hats theory here. So I'm impartial right now when I'm speaking. Okay, ready? What I've gathered from this conversation is that there's going to be huge disagreement on campus about assault weapons. That's something that we're not going to be able to resolve right now. Maybe someone down in the state level, federal level will have something to say about it, but largely that's a cultural divide, to use a word that's been tossed around quite frequently. So we're not going to solve anything assault weapons, but I think we've come together well, not here anyway, Kirby. But we've come together on two things, and actually Tyler hit them perfectly. Psychological costs. I think that medically we're in a time period where there's great opportunity. We've got the Affordable Care Act, which is being implemented, and there's a lot of wiggle room here. So I think that's something that we need to look at. Now, whether we need federal databases or not, that's something up for debate. But I think that within this legislation is an opportunity for both Republicans and Democrats to come together to look at how do we identify mental illness, and should those people be given gun rights or not. I think that's something that we should talk about, and that funding at the bare minimum towards exploring this issue is something we both agree on, both for potential killers, but then also for the victims who have witnessed those horrible crimes. So that's one agreement that I heard through listening through this conversation. Second one, I said at the beginning that about 90-ish% of Americans were for universal background checks. I think that's something that I didn't hear a large disagreement from this crowd. So that's something that we can explore. It makes it a little bit more difficult to get your hands on a gun. You have to go through a couple more hoops. Maybe there's a grandfather clause or not. But I think that cuts down on something that was brought up by the college Democrats about gun shows and what happens during there. And 10% of those sales during a gun show are private sales, which currently don't need a background check. So maybe that's something that we can get together on. But then finally, the thing that I think is most clear to me is that in the schools, and that was brought up by Amanda over there and throughout the conversation, what do we do at the school level? What happens there? And if you'll allow me, this is where I'm going to editorialize. So is that okay with everybody? All right, perfect. This is difficult for me and for a lot of people. You're emotionally invested in it. But the bottom line is that we want to prevent this from ever happening again. Are we going to be able to? No, because it happens whether we like it or not, and it sucks. But there's hope because we can spend money in a few different ways, which I think will benefit us from ever having to deal with this scale of disaster ever again. Now, this idea is not originally mine, but I think it's something that we should explore and talk about. Maybe it's a little extreme. But I would not be opposed, because we do have a federal Department of Education, to have some sort of legislation which says, in the event of a gunman entering a school and opening fire, this is the procedure. This will save lives. So every classroom is trained in the event of a gunman or gunwoman entering the room this is how you are supposed to act. This could save your life. Does that mean that we just focus on procedures? No. We can talk about getting Kevlar blankets, okay? That's really expensive. But think about this, okay? We're not going to post guards in every school. As popular as that idea sounds to a lot of people, yes, it makes me feel safe, and guards were posted at schools after what happened in Connecticut, and I think that's great, but I think that's too militant. So what do? And I think that preventative measures, whether we're talking about taking guns away from people or not, is not necessarily the focus of the conversation. We can focus on other preventative measures. Now, guns in schools was brought up by some people of the Republican Party, people of the NRA, and that's a little extreme for me. I'm going to be honest with you guys. But let's just say, for instance, that there would be tasers accessible to school administrators only, kept under lock and key in areas where school children cannot reach. Something we should consider. Now, I think those sorts of threats, if a gunman knows heading into school that these procedures are in place, that there are preventative things which will not attract attention, will do better. And finally, and this is my last point, and then I'm free to talk afterwards for as long as you please, I think the final thing that we need to make sure that we don't discuss, and I was really happy that we didn't here, is to not talk about the gunman himself or herself, but on the people who died. Giving attention to these people who commit these horrible acts of crime, I think only inspires more of it. And it's a downward spiral because we give them way too much attention. So with that, a couple of quick things. I want to, first of all, thank all of the participants. You guys were fantastic. Big round of applause to all of you guys. What? Democrats, do you want a response to the college Republicans? To what I just said? I thought I was relatively okay there, but all right, quick. If you have disputes with me, come and see me. We can talk later. We're gonna wrap it up. Day at the Capitol, March 20th. If you want to go, please, yes, please go. It's gonna be great. There's an alumni connection. It affects our school, so look into it. With that, thank you all so much for coming, and have a great day.